Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next episode of the Pragmatic Anarchist. This episode, episode 6, Making Moneyless Moves and Seeking Sustainable Society. I'm bringing on today a guest. He's the author of a book called Moneyless Society, Matthew Holton. He also runs the Moneyless Society pages and Facebook groups. I really enjoy a lot of what this guy has to say. And to get right into it, welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Joey. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you, and thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
No problem. It's great to hear solutions to the problems we're facing as a society. There's a lot to talk about and unpack when it's the collapse of civilization as we live through it on a daily basis. And we all just pretend it's okay. But we have to look at things. So to get right into it, your book, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to come on this journey. It started with a Facebook group and a page and led to the book, and how it started, where it's going, what your plans are for it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of people ask me, why I wrote the book. And, as far as that's concerned, I really kind of have to take it back to, my childhood and a lot of things that I experienced, as a kid. My mom committed suicide when she was, when I was a teenager. She was in her 30s, and it was a really rough time for me. But basically, the medical system failed her. And, and then it kind of continued to fail me thereafter. I wasn't really able to get the help that I needed in a lot of ways. And, I bounced around. I ran away from home. I've had over 100 jobs in my life. I've worked for 7 different restaurants, waiting tables. I've done pizza delivery. I've, sold insurance. I was a poker dealer. I've had all these jobs and everything, but I've never really been able to, kind of get settled into society because, I was just having such a struggle keeping my head above water. Had a daughter at a young age too, and that made things, difficult as well. And but I just kind of wanted to check out of society a lot because I was just very, kind of just depressed with where the world was and how people are treated, and how the medical system just doesn't really give a damn about people for the most part, it seems. And basically, I tried to, find alternatives and solutions. I really wanted to go join some sort of eco village or eco community or something like that. But my daughter was kind of, also still, I very much wanted to be a part of her life. And so basically I kind of chose to stay within the system and not, just live a nomadic life off the grid. And also because I, kind of was forced to as well because of child support. I had to pay child support and things like that. But, yeah, so I saw the films, the Zeitgeist films and everything, and I thought that was a really cool concept. But, I was hoping that there would be some sort of community of people that were kind of out there, building these values in real life. And I couldn't really find anything in that regard. And so, I mean, I started searching for more people and more communities that were really trying to build, a technologically abundant, kind of cooperative, sustainable sort of society. And maybe there's little villages here and there that kind of have some of those ideas, but I couldn't really find anybody that was actually physically building those things. And so that was kind of where this all started, is me really kind of wanting to contribute to that movement and build some sort of physical community or cooperative system in the long term. And, that was about 10 years ago, this all started. And 10 years later, there's a book and everything out now. We still aren't to the stage where we're actually building communities and cooperatives, but we're getting closer. I feel like, the next year or two, we'll start forming some of these business entities that actually, are based on these more cooperative systems. And because, the organization is kind of reaching a point to where it has enough people and it has enough support and, everything in order to do that. So that's kind of the gist of where we really want to go, is creating, co-ops that utilize the structures that we have right now within capitalism, essentially, to create more egalitarian or more equal ownership models, essentially, to where everybody owns something as opposed to just, the investors or a few people at the top. And we've kind of, the movement in general has really kind of used these cooperatives as a transitional phase that can be utilized to create, a system of abundance, a system where everybody gets what they need. And exactly all the details of how that'll happen and everything are still kind of, not exactly worked out. And there's a lot of questions that need to be answered and a lot of details that need to be figured out. But in the long term, we really do want to create these more cooperative structures and entities that will network together and, form a system where everybody can get what they need without, having to sell their time and their labor for 8 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week or whatever it may be. based on a more of a voluntary system that eliminates a lot of the unnecessary, labor and activity that the capitalist system just essentially, thrives on and requires as well.
That makes perfect sense. And that was one of the first things I noticed when I started reading your book was that we're basically the same guy. If I ticked off my driving pizza for years, living off the grid, working on sailboats, traveling, seeing other places, smaller communities where it works in better ways, and thinking if this is available to do, like, why can't we all do this? And then we're supposed to be in like this. We're getting close to a post-scarcity world. Like the Industrial Revolution, machinery and technology are supposed to be making it so we have to perform less labor, right? Like that was the whole idea, was we're creating robots to do our jobs. And but if we're not getting equal values and shares in the benefits of this, then really it's just creating a larger wealth gap, right? And finding a way to get around that. And you mentioned cooperatives. There's a guy I talk to a lot online, Patrick Conlon. He runs Works, right? And
yeah, I know Patrick well. He's a great guy.
He's awesome dude, and he's he's trying to help people. He has people coming to him all the time, like, how do we make this cooperative business model work?
Right.
And he's got some answers. And there's so many people out there, economists like Richard Wolff and such that are posing these questions and providing us answers and solutions to it. And that's one of the big takeaways from your book, was that, you started with where you came from and then sort of what the problem is. And then, you have some ideas on where we can go from that. So like, if you could expound upon, like, if someone hadn't read your book and the biggest takeaway on what we could do to move forward from this stuff, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically to reach out create these cooperative systems in your daily life, if you can do that, and in any way that you can do that, in order to, get your neighbors and community members and family and whoever else involved, and work together to start essentially decommodifying, as I think a good word for it, a lot of the, things that we need on a daily basis. That means, food, water, shelter, clothing, electricity, and eventually, things like education and healthcare and things like that too. I think if people do work together, they can start providing these things. And I think a lot of the larger systems will end up following suit once kind of the mindset and the paradigm is there a little bit more. But we have to enact that paradigm, I think, in our own lives. It's not something that is going to be, just implemented by the government at some point without there being like a massive, paradigm shift in the population that essentially demands something like that. And in order to create that sort of a paradigm shift, we have to start really trying to think of all the ways that we can essentially become producers as communities. We've essentially, what we've done is we've sloughed off the task of producing anything to business and the profit mechanism, and it's destroying the planet is what's the problem. Is it's overusing resources, and we're on the way to the sixth mass extinction as we know it with climate change and everything. But that mechanism isn't working anymore. It worked well for a long time to kind of get us to the point we are, but it's always had detrimental and negative side effects, obviously. But we got to realize that the problems that it has created, it can't really be solved by the same thing that created them. We need to get past this rugged individualist mindset that says, I have to profit, I have to have this for myself, and I have to keep this property because there's not enough to go around, to a mindset that really says, there is enough to go around, especially if I can work together with the people around me and my neighbors to create abundance, in my own life, in my own community. And there's plenty of ways to do that. And we just kind of have to really start thinking about those ways, even if it's like a community garden at the end of a street, or creating a cooperative that produces clothing or something like that. Or I personally like starting kind of with the basics on sort of things, because, like food, water, shelter, those are the things that people really need. And if you can start providing those things for yourself in a cooperative fashion and not having to rely on corporations or the profit structure and, these, traditional hierarchical means of business structure, then that's a major step in the right direction. And it creates this kind of foundational paradigm shift where people actually do start cooperating more. They do have these relationships and interactions where they're making more cohesive group decisions and they're thinking things through. It's not just this kind of happenstance, random way that things happen by everybody doing what's in their own best interest. It's everybody cooperating, communicating to do what's in the best interest of everybody. And that's kind of a fundamental paradigm and mind shift that I really think needs to happen on a smaller scale, and then we'll kind of grow. But it's not something that's going to be, really promoted by the mainstream media or probably, the authorities or any kind of political figures to a large degree. Bernie Sanders was maybe kind of coming close with like Medicare for all. Maybe if we had gotten that in place, who knows, there would have been education for all after that, and that could have started to snowball from there. But, as it is right now, it doesn't look like things like that are really going to happen anytime soon. So we kind of have to start doing what we can in our own lives as well, to really kind of shift the system towards thinking that way.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I lived in Florida, right? And after every hurricane I've been through, I lived in the Keys. I'm here in Lee County where Ian just hit. And I was here when Irma came through too. And the first thing I noticed, once the internet goes off and the power goes out and the storm is over, right? The community comes together. You're out there moving the stuff out of your yard, and the neighbors are done cleaning their yard and they walk over and help you. Or the family that set up the big smoker on the corner out off Lee Boulevard and Lehigh Acres here, and they were just cooking food. And if you were hungry, stop and get the food. And when you remove the profit motive and you remove the reliance on, the internet brings us together, but it also, pulls us apart at the same time. Like all of a sudden, people didn't have their cable television to stare into, and they went out and they worked with each other to cover each other's needs, right? And it happens when we want it to happen, but the minute that you go back to your personalized ads and the consume that the notifications on your phone are giving you, like it drags that away, and it's.
Yeah. And not only that, is the pressure, the overall system is still there. Things like that happen. And unfortunately, it takes, a disaster, some sort of catastrophe for people to come together like that a lot of the time. But then the overall arching, structures that we've created where you're forced to go back to work and you're forced to go to the grocery store to get your food and you're forced to get in your car and commute and things like that. They pressure you into, acting all these certain ways. And before you know it, you're back within the system that, has been created and experiencing all of those wonderful side effects that it produces as well. And, it's in order to really make a shift, I think we have to sort of get people in a different environment. And I think that's what happens when you have these sort of catastrophes and disasters and things like that, is people are put into a different environment where all of a sudden, hey, we can't rely on these structures anymore. Now we have to do something different. We're forced to do something different. And it's pretty cool because what do you see people reverting to? Cooperation. They don't revert to a barter system where they're well, if I help you get that, log out of your yard, then I want you to come over here and help me move my car. Is that a deal? Do we have a contract on that? Like, it's not how it works a lot of the time. People just help each other and they're, oh yeah, for sure, man, I can help you out with that too. No worries. And that's kind of the way human nature, I think, really, it's our default system, I think, and the way that humans have really kind of worked in the past before capitalism was ever a thing. We were in these tribes and smaller communities compared to the huge cities most of the time that we have in modern society. But people had to work together, and there was no profit motive for anybody to really come out on top. There was cooperation and family and community and things like that where people helped each other, and it's nice to see that come back to the surface. Even though it might be unfortunate circumstances a lot of the time. But yeah, I mean, the trick is how do you create that in everyday community, and I think you have to consciously do that. And it's a learning curve. You actually have to start communicating with other people about decisions that need to be made around not just your house, but your community and, even the systems that provide us with what we need on a daily basis, like, growing food and electricity and housing and creating clothing and things like that. I mean, if we could all create systems where we do this on our own, we can grow, fabric in a field not fabric, you grow cotton or whatever, bamboo and other things that you can make fabric out of. But, there's nothing stopping us from doing these things, in a more cooperative fashion a lot of the time. We just have to be creative and think of all the ways that we can create these things in our lives, because the technology is so advanced now compared to what it was 100, 200, 300 years ago that we can essentially, damn near create anything we want out of almost anything we want. And there's nothing stopping us from really implementing technology to the wisest and most beneficial ways anymore, as long as we just come together and decide to do that. And that's kind of the crux of the situation, is how do we implement modern technology, and come to these more cooperative structures and create them in our lives without, reverting back to the old system. And that's where creating the new systems comes in. And it's a slow, arduous process. And it takes a lot of, like I said, just kind of learning about these new systems and then implementing them in our lives. Things like using sociocracy as a kind of government system for, businesses and communities and things like that, or owning things, cooperatively, where it's not just you, but it's an entire community, say, that owns maybe an entire community of houses or various structures and other ways, other more cooperative and equal ways of owning and governing things. So I think that's the direction that society is headed overall. And without those sort of structures, then we can keep falling back into this profit motive thing, and this rugged individualistic mindset. And it's going to be essentially, creating these things consciously and a process of doing that over the coming years and decades that's really going to shift us, I think.
Yeah, that actually kind of leads into what you were talking about there. I wanted to ask you, one of the first things that shows on your site is the difference between transitioning from transactional reciprocity to systemic reciprocity, right? And
yeah,
and I don't actually understand what that means. So explain that more a little bit. Basically, what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of a mindset from going from everything has to be a trade based transaction of some sort, like I'm trading my time for money, or we're going to trade chickens for rice or something like that in a barter system. And that's essentially how the capitalist system relies, is everything has to be based on a trade or a transaction, and everything's a commodity. Everything is made to be bought and sold in the market now. And it's very hard to obtain a lot of the daily necessities that we need without buying and selling them through the market, and without trading something, to get the money that we have to do that. So essentially what we want to do is create systems where instead of you have to trade everything, that the system just takes care and gives people what they need. No exchange for anything. Essentially, you don't have to exchange your time or labor to get a place to live, to get food, to get clothing, to get electricity, or a computer, to blah blah blah. Just all these things that you need to live and operate in normal society. You get them on a systemic basis, and you contribute voluntarily to the system that's providing you. And a lot of them aren't necessarily like property of yours to own, like the larger things, especially like housing and transportation. There would be more access to these things where they're run for the benefit of everybody, and people would essentially just get what they need from the system without being told when or where, even if they have to contribute. They just contribute when and where they can voluntarily. They take educational courses that they want. They, contribute to their community by working at the sort of projects or wherever they want. And they can live in various communities, and as long as those places are, essentially being operated under the same, kind of agreements. And that's kind of what we see at forming into as a future, like a bunch of communities and cooperative networks that essentially just provide what they need to each other on a regular basis. You can producing as much as you can locally within these places as well. Localization is a biggie, just to eliminate unnecessary transportation and resource usage. But also, there's things might be more regionally produced that are more difficult to produce, say like vehicles or computers or things like that, where you need larger scale manufacturing. Those would likely be produced on a more regional basis, to where, one region would serve many, or one production facility would serve many communities with those sorts of things. But yeah, and so it's all these different systems and structures. We kind of have an idea of what they would look like, but a lot of the details are there to be fleshed out, essentially. But yeah, and so it's just essentially you're getting what you need out of the system overall without having to trade your time or money or labor. It just essentially eliminates the need for it, so we're just trying to make the need for trade obsolete. You don't have to trade your time or your labor or energy anymore. And we found a better way now, where the entire system can take care of everybody, and we just keep it going because it's a great system and people are incentivized to do that.
Right. And that sounds like that sounds great to me. And when I talk about these ideas with people sometimes, of course the detractors are like, well, wouldn't everyone want to live in Florida? Well, I mean, no. There's people
I'm happy in Southern California, and I know a lot of people that don't even want to move here too. And this is beautiful out here where I live. So.
Right. So everyone's not going to just flock to one region or whatever. People are inherently different. And when it comes to that, everyone deserves access to basic human rights. And if you want to, go travel the world, you have the freedom to perform the extra labor that it would take to go do the extra things, right? As if you're not worried about, where the food for your children are coming from or where you're going to live. And when you go off to go on this adventure, then the housing that you vacated opens up for another person to go in. Like it would be very easy for this to work. I'd be okay with, being able to go check out the West Coast for a couple of weeks and then come back and have the place where I live, or maybe the labor that I choose to perform has me going to these different places to do different things. But if it wasn't just based on taking the first job I needed to take to survive and not starve to death, people are not inherently, this word lazy gets thrown around so much by everyone in capitalism because it's been pounded into our head. But if you take 100 people and you put them locked in a room with food and a bathroom and water and nothing to do, they're going to go crazy. They're all going to want to go do something, right? Because laziness is a concept that was made up by people participating in this transactional society, right? Like it's not, it's one of those trigger words for me. I'm like, there's people want to produce and they want to do the things like, that's the thing. Look at what happens when people retire. They get bored out of their minds and then they go find shit to do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it comes kind of back to the premise of the concept in psychology called operant conditioning. And it's essentially positive reinforcement. When people do things that contribute to their community and, make physical progress in their community, then there's positive reinforcement that's produced even without money. And money right now is, a large portion of the positive reinforcement that people receive, essentially because money acts as both a barrier and an access point to essentially everything we need. So if we need food, water, shelter, or to go see a movie or to go have a nice dinner somewhere, we're incentivized to get money to do basically any of that. And it becomes like this middleman for everything. And the money itself is essentially providing this positive reinforcement right now. Whereas when you take that positive reinforcement out of the equation that comes from money, then you're simply reverting back to the positive reinforcement that's generated, say, when you build an automated garden for your community, and everybody benefits by that, because now even if it was just, say, one crop or something, let's say you built a robot that could harvest strawberries, right? And now your entire community, or your block or something, maybe has strawberries, because it can be produced on a relatively automated basis by a robot. And you're proud of that, and your community thanks you for doing that. And maybe you have a little party on the weekend where you have, like, everybody has strawberry pie, or strawberry shortcake or something like that. And these natural, more community ways of showing positive reinforcement and experiencing it kind of end up going to the back burner a lot of the time. And we've kind of seen a trend away from those sort of things too. I mean, imagine, 50 or 100 years ago, when people actually used to go outside and have these block parties where everybody got together and things like that in their neighborhoods. And that's how community used to work, is people gather out in a campfire and tell stories and share all their food that they, had caught or harvested throughout the previous day or week or whatever. And, that's essentially kind of what we've lost with the profit motive in that system, is it takes all that and puts it on the back burner, and money becomes this thing that everybody's so focused on, we've almost forgotten about all that other shit. And that's kind of the problem, is we need to say, hang on, money isn't actually the thing that we're really looking for here. A lot of the time, sure, we may need money to do this and money to do that and money to do this, but there's that to do this part that it seems that people kind of goes in the back of their head, and wait, it's just money that all of a sudden is providing. No, it's not. It's the water that you're drinking, and it's the food on your table, and it's the relationships that you have with the people that, the socioeconomic system that enables you to, experience and interact with, and a host of other things. And all that will all of a sudden come to the forefront when money is put in the back burner. And that's exactly what's happening in a lot of these disaster situations too. Like you're saying, money is gone. This system is gone all of a sudden, and hey, maybe I'll cook up some food for everybody, because why? Everybody would really appreciate that, and they're probably freaking hungry,
Right? Yeah, it's that simple. We invented money, food. We've been eating food to survive since long before money existed. We're the only people who have, every other creature on our planet somehow functions just fine without these transactions, right? They still build their nests and their hives and take care of their young, or do whatever it is that they naturally do as the species they are. But we were like, what if we took all that and we put it behind money, right? Like, that's...
Yeah. I mean, essentially what happened is the entire, we all used to be tribes living in this fashion, even way back in the day in, Eastern Europe and Northern Europe and a lot of these places, they all, at one time or another, when you go far enough back in history, everybody was living this way in some sort of time. And eventually people essentially just, whatever it was, through trade or hoarding of wealth or whatnot, you had people that just essentially dominated other people by taking their land and property and using it to their own benefit. And the system essentially took over the world for whatever reason it is. But now there's, very few people that run these systems. And I think a lot of them know damn well what they're doing. But the people at the top who have all this in charge, they like their positions of power and wealth that they've, generated and that they're maintained by the current system, and they probably aren't going to give them up very easily. And that's kind of the problem. That's why we don't see a lot of these solutions and things like that, because they enjoy their jets and their mansions and 6 mansions or whatever it is, and all the privilege and opportunity that comes with positions of high status. But the rest of us are kind of not doing so well, and neither is the planet at this point. And there's going to have to be some compromises one way or the other, because if we don't address these things, then they're going to catch up with us, and they're going to catch up with everybody. And I don't care who you are. It's not very much fun, watching the world burn, even if it's from a penthouse and you're in a private view, so eventually it's going to catch up with everybody. And that's the kind of the fever pitch that we're getting to lately, is all these economic disruptions and, social or civil, disturbances and everything like that. They're going to come to a point where where it's going to be too much and something's going to give, something's going to break one way or the other. Hopefully we can have some, good ideas and some examples and systems and structures in place, before that happens, and maybe transition to over some of that relatively easily. That's kind of our goal, is to start showing people more of these systems and structures and helping them transition over. Like one of my next projects, I just finished my book, but one of my next projects that I want to do is create a series of videos about forming cooperatives and form a couple ourselves and see how they go, and try to help other people do the same thing within this community to start actually creating these systems and structures. And yeah, so I don't know, just kind of went off on a tangent there with that.
No, it's perfect. That's how we find out how this stuff works, right? That's how we get there, because people sit around and talk about doing stuff on the internet all day, and then it takes someone with the idea to go out and pursue it, and that's what I like about what you've done. You had this idea, and you pursued this to the point now where you published the book on it. You're enacting the systems that can help bring this about, and that's very admirable. I really appreciate that, because this is how we make those changes, right? Like, if we have to participate, and we have to float these ideas, and then we have to put them into action. When the no one wants to work movement last, it's been almost 2 years now, before the Great Resignation and all that, and like I heard all these businesses saying nobody wants to work for us, right? And I was like, I mean, but and it was because of the benefits, and they're like, everyone's just sitting on these unemployment. I'm like, unemployment ended in Florida, guys, and you're still not able to find work. Maybe that's not what it is. And I put out my applications, and then nobody got back. I'm like, well, if I'm not qualified, I'm either I was getting, my resume is too vast, or I'm not qualified enough. I'm like, I'm either too smart for the job, or I'm not qualified for the job, but I can't be both, right? Like, it's, you guys got to pick one or the other here. and then all of a sudden across the country, hundreds of thousands of other people were just like, wait, that's also been happening to me. So it's like, so it sounds like people want to work, and then the unemployment rate dropped to like the lowest it's ever been. So people are working, but they still can't afford their bills. And then it's late stage capitalism is a word that gets thrown around a lot on this, but it's, and like you said, we're watching in real time as the fire burns, and we can either stand there and watch it happen, or we can, we've got to go out and find ways to stop the fire. And one of the things I see on your website here that I've had a couple of people mention this thing to me, the Venus Project. I don't know how much you're involved with that or whatever. Tell us what your opinion on that is, because that's a subject that I like to hear more on all the time.
Sure. Yeah. I haven't really been terribly involved with the Venus Project. I definitely know who they are, and I speak with a lot of the people from that organization on, a regular basis. And, but I mean, as far as like, partnering with them or something like that, we haven't done that. We're our own organization. And, I love what a lot of the Venus Project has done and is doing. And, I think the approach that they're taking is kind of trying to build eventually like a kind of a larger city model right off the bat, where I think our approach is trying to be more of like this kind of grassroots, one piece at a time sort of thing. Like the Venus Project, they have their, kind of, I forget exactly what it is, their, International Resource Center or something like that, where they're trying to build the system and kind of get it all the ideas and everything hashed out and worked out to build one big project at once, I believe. And I'm not really too sure where along the process of that they are. I think that's kind of the direction that they're heading. Whereas we're kind of like, we're just going to put this
too.
Yeah,
and,
we're just kind of,
they're based out of Florida here, and it's it sounds like that. Like where you're trying to sort of inspire smaller group projects that could all come together into working together to be this thing, and they're trying to like you're doing it this way, they're doing it this way, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like we're putting down like one brick at a time. Okay, we've got this one little piece figured out. Let's move on to this next little piece, and that's kind of more the approach that we're taking. Whereas they're kind of taking it, I think, at least my opinion, like I don't want to misrepresent what they're doing, but like, from what I've seen and what I've heard about what the current direction that they're heading is, they're trying to take it more like an overall, like we're going to create this big system all at once. And I think that's cool if they can do that. I don't know exactly how close they are to being able to do that, because I haven't really spoken with them about that on a very intensive basis, really. I've just kind of checked out their website and spoken to a few people about it here and there. But I love the Venus Project. I love Jacques Fresco. I love all the work that they've done. I haven't visited their facility, or their whatever the property they have there in Venus, Florida, the 21-acre research center, I guess. But I'd love to go see it sometime and actually meet Roxanne. Unfortunately, Jacques passed away before I was ever able to, make it out there. But I do know a lot of people that have met him also, and they, say he was just as awesome in person as everything we see of him online with all the videos and everything. And yeah, one of these days, I'll make a pilgrimage out to Venus, Florida, pay homage.
maybe I should do that
Fresco.
for an episode next, because I've been when I saw that on your site, I was like, oh, maybe you know more about this, because it gets brought up a couple of times in the circles that we talk to people about these things, and I'm actually just right across the state from them, so I
oh, nice.
I could pop right over. And then what was the next? I had one of my Patreon subscribers here, one of the two, he had a really good question for me to ask. And so in the money economy where we're in right now, we're dealing with inflation. In this moneyless society system. If a craftsperson's got a couple of kids, they need more resources than before in order to raise their family, and basically asking for more compensation for the same work. Does that upset the balance of what the system would be doing?
I don't think so. I mean, and it kind of depends on, I guess, what it is. I mean, if you've already, the goal is to create the system and put it in place where people already have everything that they need. So they're like, well, what else would I need?
That makes sense.
If you have a decent sized home, and things like that, and then let's say there's a park right outside your door with all kinds of maybe athletic facilities and things like that, or a nice community and people around you are just like, well, what do you want? Do you want a bigger house? Or, maybe we could find a way to, if your family grows or something like that, maybe we could add a room or something like that onto a house. And I think just more, instead of, it being like a yes or no situation, it's like, I think people would work more with their community kind of on a basis to think, okay, what do we really need? What can we do without, and I hate to say like you got to sacrifice a bunch of stuff either, but a lot of the time less is more. If you have this big giant house and all these areas that you're not using and everything, then what good is it doing? And those resources can be used for other things at other times. I'm all for having nice, large living spaces, but I'm also all for kind of sharing and using things together, when it's appropriate. I think, it's like, I wouldn't want to have like my own gym in my own house and everybody have their own like gym or something
that
like
makes
that.
sense. If there's a good community gym, you're not trading your time and value to go get use of that gym. So that makes sense. That there would be enough that wherever this kid ends up, whether it's your family or some other family, if you like, your living space is your living space. You don't need the huge, bigger, extra amount of resources and houses, because all of the resources you need to raise your kid is available
right
within
outside
the community.
Your door. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Okay, so that
and so I think, a lot of the time people are like, yeah, well, more material wealth, more material this and that and the other, and it's kind of like, again, where it's not really ours. It's like, what can we do for the community? What can we all cooperate to do for each other? And if there is something like, say the gym needs an upgrade, like, okay, well, how can we talk about this as a community and maybe get a few new squat racks in here, something like that, or whatever it is. I think things like that are kind of best to think about like on a case by case basis. If somebody needs a new home or something like that, and their home is kind of falling apart, then, the community pitches in, and if that's necessary or possible, to get this person a newer, better home or upgrade it, whatever, things like that. And And we kind of just have to start thinking together in all those ways to how we can provide everything that we need and more, and luxuries at that, and create these really neat, cool living situations where people have everything they need, not just to survive, but to thrive in addition to it, and there's a lot of cool ways to do that, I think. And people just, kind of need to start thinking together again, like, what can we do for everybody? How can we work together to create this?
Right, because right now we have more houses and more space in houses in the United States than we have people to live in them, and
Yeah.
we have these single celebrities that live in these 17-room mansions that like maybe just go get an apartment guy and we're gonna let this family move
Yeah.
in there. Like they didn't know they were gonna have quadruplets.
Or
You
10
don't have
families,
quadruplets, right? Like we can, yeah, that
you
makes
know?
sense.
Yeah.
In the communal living model where we're not thinking of everything as a transaction, there could be space for everyone. That makes sense to
Yeah.
me because I lived when I lived in the Keys, the boat that I worked on, the Wolf, we took a bunch of food to Haiti after the earthquake. Like we were like, there's people in need. There's places that the
Yeah.
stuff's not getting to. We filled up
Exactly. I
our
mean,
sailboat and we just took it to them. Like we
yeah.
didn't that we just did it. Like it was that easy.
Yeah, and in my book, I think the figures that we listed in there were something like 23 homes, actual homes for every homeless person. That's not rooms. That's actual just entire
Like full
homes.
ass houses.
Yeah, like a full ass home or apartment unit, something, just sitting vacant for every 23 units, essentially, for every single homeless person out there. And that's not including giant mansions with 20 empty rooms. That's not including, businesses that sit empty all night. you
Yeah.
know, that's not including giant office buildings that are just sitting there empty and things like that. And, government facilities that just go unused, and on and on and on. We have the resources, we just need to come together and figure out ways to utilize them in a better fashion through cooperation rather than these, rugged individualist competitive systems that we have in place now.
Yeah. We
So,
and in our country we were on the way to stuff like that. Like our entire boom period, right? Like we all these people, and back then it was, now we talk about billionaires, but at first they were like, nobody needs $1 million. So if you make more than $1 million, you're going to get taxed higher. And then all these wealth taxes, and now we treat corporations like a person that doesn't have to pay taxes. But they used to have less rights, a corporate entity, and more of the money from that would go to funding these social programs that we had, and we built the park system, and we built the roads, and we put all these items in place, took those burdens off of the individuals in the communities who were we didn't have to worry about maintaining the roads because the money was there to do it, and then everyone experienced a boom and rose together. And then as we've shifted to, like you call it, the rugged individualism, when now corporations are people, and they're people that don't have to pay their fair share, and they've hyperinflated everything. And this is when people talk about inflation today. Like I'm like, every corporation that is bitching about inflation is also bragging in their shareholder meetings about the record profits they've been posting. The restaurant industry, all these industries that were going to see losses during the pandemic. We threw all this money at them, and then they actually, none of them showed loss. They all showed profit. They all continue to show profit, and the profit margin's gotten higher. But now there's inflation, so we have to pay more. But it's, to me, it feels not just forced but made up. Like it can't be both. You can't not be able to afford to do business and also be doing the best business you've ever had, right? Like part of that feels disingenuous. And as long as the system is rewarding the people who do that, that's going to keep happening. And this is where it comes to why, from what I was seeing in your book and the ideas that we share in the groups about these things, like we are at the point where something has to change, and they're not going to change it. The politicians, the people in charge, the people who profit from these things, they have no incentive to change it because they are reaping the benefits of the broken system.
yeah.
I'm poor. I grew up in foster homes. my mom was a weed dealer. So like for a long time, I thought that was okay. I supplemented my income by dealing drugs. Then I ended up getting a felony for that. And now the same street corner where I was arrested for selling weed is a weed store, because now it's okay because they can make their money off of it. But I still am branded a felon for the rest of my life for these things. And I didn't, my mom told me don't trust the cops and this is okay. And then like, obviously as an adult, I can look back at that and see that that was a really bad thing to learn growing up, but that's what I knew from where I came from in the society. If I grew up in a mansion with access to resources and good credit and a business loan, I probably wouldn't have, sold quarter bags of weed. Like that wouldn't have ever occurred to me because it's not part of what my lifestyle was. And when we're looking at how to shift to where everyone has equal opportunities, equal access to resources, these things won't happen. There won't be financial incentive for people to deal drugs, for people to commit crimes, because almost every single crime out there financially motivated, right? People don't go rob a bank because they have so much money. Like you don't rob the person walking down the street because you think they have money. Like you don't need their money. You need the thing that the money is going to get you. So we remove those needs. We probably remove a lot of these crimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only do you remove a lot of the crime, you remove a lot of the trauma and things like that people have to go through when they don't have the things that they really need in life. When they have to go out and fight for it, or they essentially have to commit crimes or things like that. You stop a lot of bad things from happening to a lot of people too. And I think with a few generations of people actually getting a lot of the resources and things like that they need, that a lot of violent crime too would simply decrease. Even just like domestic violence, household problems, even things like just murders out of passion and things like that, or even like a lot of mental problems would probably start to kind of fade away, as well as society is just better taken care of, essentially,
It
in a lot of sort of ways. Everything from nutrition to healthcare to actually exercise, getting the resources that people need, having enough time to rest, community. All of these things play into people's health and wellness, and even their actions and decisions on a daily basis. And if you have people that are trying to cope with a dysfunctional society, with a lot of dysfunctional people that have reacted in a dysfunctional way to this dysfunctional society, then you're going to get more dysfunctional behavior, and that manifests in all sorts of ways. And the main solution is to start with a actual functioning society, and then let those effects essentially ripple through generations. And it's probably not, it won't solve all the problems overnight, because there will be an adjustment period for people where they're still going to try to revert back to a lot of these old ways. And it's
all some people know. It's all I knew for a long time.
Exactly. Like you were talking, like I wanted to touch on the whole COVID and inflation and all this thing. And I think, when dealing with complex systems like this, it's hard to single out like one single thing. Like there probably is some inflation. I believe that inflation is affecting us to a degree, especially with how much money people got during COVID. A lot of people ended up, getting, like I think it was over a year's worth of unemployment. And that was a really awesome thing for me. It actually really helped me finish my book and get that out there. And a lot of people, for one of the first times in my life too, I really experienced some actual stability, because I wasn't really doing very well at a lot of these jobs that I had and was kind of failing at before. And I ended up getting pretty decent health insurance and getting some help like medically that I needed as well in a few various ways. And my quality of life actually improved over the course of COVID. I mean, I know I can't say that for a lot of other people. Unfortunately, it affected a lot of other negative ways. But I think the same sort of thing happened for a lot of people too, where either one, it affected them in a beneficial way, or two, it affected them in a really negative way. And there's a lot of people who experience both across the spectrum. But it stirred up the system. It gave a lot of people access to resources and money without working, which for the first time, a lot of people actually could sit there and think that, hey, the system actually runs and I don't have to go to work at this bullshit job that I've had for the last 5 years, and everything is still working relatively okay. And I think it got a lot of people thinking that maybe there is a better way. Maybe we don't have to have just all this endless economic activity all the time that doesn't really contribute anything meaningful to society or humanity. And also it gave people money for doing nothing. and a lot of people don't really want to go back to their jobs now that exploit them for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day, or however much it just happens to be. And it was a wake up call for a lot of people, I think, what happened. And I can't really blame a lot of people for not really wanting to go back and work for 10 or 12 or $15 an hour, after they ended up, getting unemployment for that and just kind of, doing their own thing and surviving for a while, or even thriving in some cases.
Right.
But then a lot of other people.
It was a stability that I've never been able to maintain myself, even with the very small amount of unemployment that was coming in Florida. Like at the end of it, it was $250 a week was the maximum. I got the minimum. Yeah. So when it got to all the federal money went away, I was getting $100 a week. That was still $100 a week that I knew was going to be there.
Yeah.
While I figured out what was going on. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people experience that. And, it's hard to go back to this regular capitalist exploitative system, that we have now, coming from something like that. It's a hard pill to swallow.
Everyone was given time to do things that brought them joy, and they didn't just sit there doing nothing with it. Right? People worked on their passion projects. You worked on your book. I worked on my gaming and streaming business that I've wanted to start. I didn't set out to become a podcaster about financial shit. Like I was trying to do a whole different thing.
A lot of people they exited, the traditional workforce. They found their own means of sustaining themselves, and a lot of people that did happen to, and I'm still kind of trying to do that with my book. But in any case, it's like I don't want to go back to a normal job now. It's me also. I love the work that I do now. The book that I've written, I really think it can help a lot of people in a lot of ways, and at least I hope it does. And I love having these types of conversations and moving these systems forward in the direction, that they're going. And there's no way that I would really want to go and, sell insurance again, or go, wait tables at a restaurant on Friday or Saturday nights and have to leave my family to do that. And, things of that nature. And, I think a lot of people feel the same way, and a lot of people are kind of stuck now, and they're fed up with the system, and they want to see it change, and we know that these systems work. I mean, there's Mondragon, the largest cooperative in the world, with something with like 80,000 employees. They basically have their own little city in the Basque region. And, when the 2008 and 9 financial crisis hit with them, hardly anybody lost their jobs. They just shifted people around from one position in the company to another where they were more needed. And they all voluntarily took pay cuts instead of, laying people off. And they, and then the company is thriving. They have like over 100 subsidiaries. They're one of the largest manufacturers, I think, of solar modules in the world. They're a thriving technological powerhouse, and it's a cooperative. People actually owning things more democratically and running things more democratically. We know it works. The town of Moneyless in Spain also has been run by a communist mayor for like 30 years now, and it's just like a giant agricultural cooperative essentially. And they don't even have mortgages or a police force. We know these models can work.
Nice.
Rojava in Syria is another great example of a cooperative confederation. Essentially, lots of different groups of cooperatives that employ the same systems, and it's very equitable. Commonly democratically owned, systems that they've implemented there, and they're working really well. And we don't hear about them on the mainstream media or the news, or, in everyday, the Time magazine or the New York Times and stuff like that, because those people don't really want us to know that these systems exist and that they work and that they can work well.
Right.
And when stuff like that starts coming out, it starts scaring the people that do own these big corporations and everything, and that usually gets shut down. But eventually it's going to come out, and more people are finding out about it. And one of our jobs is to help get that message out there, and that's what we do.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I started this show. I want access to this information to be available to people, because, it was the fact that Business Insider wrote an article about my thing was a fluke. That it was the exact opposite of everything I've ever seen come out of that publication. When they called me, I was like, what? But, one person there saw the opportunity to make money off of this story that I had. And I was like, because I'm sure a bunch of people got paid for that shit. I didn't. And then, running a Facebook group, you've got a pretty big Facebook group there. I don't know if people know this, but Facebook group moderators don't get paid. We do this labor out of the desire to help spread these ideas, and seeing the blowing up of support in these places, besides the every now and again getting brigaded by a group of the capitalist sympathizers that happens to all of our pages at points. We're getting close to the end here, and I'm the last thing I wanted to ask you about. Obviously, your book. I've been running the little thing on the bottom here that shows that it's available on Amazon. Are there links to that on your website and all that? Tell us everything that you're doing and how people can find it.
Absolutely. So the book is available on Amazon as well as Barnes and Noble, or you can just Google it. It'll come back with a lot of, different avenue or, just online publication or websites, whatever. You can also check out our website. There is a link to it on the website, moneylesssociety.com. And there's a few links on there too. Check out our podcast. We have a podcast on YouTube as well. Please check that out. Subscribe to that. And our Facebook page and group, we're always welcoming, new people there on a daily basis who like to come and, explore the subject and have conversations about it. And, we just try to keep an open mind about all of it as well. I think that's one of the things that people really like about our page and our group is we don't really say, this is how it is, this is how it has to be. We're open to all these ideas and, to new people and ideas and organizations coming in and sharing their thoughts and their progress and, their projects and things like that they're doing. So it's a really fun space, really, just interesting topic and to explore and learn more about, because there's always something new and always new people to meet in that regard. And it just keeps on, expanding and getting more interesting on a daily basis. So it's really cool. But and like I said, one of my next projects is to start producing a good amount of videos and articles are going to kind of be my next focus for a while. So if you check out the website, you'll probably see some of my material popping up there pretty soon. Just kind of getting all my ducks in a row to kind of start doing that. Should be able to start getting those out probably by the end of the month, January here. But I can't really think. If you want to get a hold of us, there's a link on our website to become a volunteer as well. We have just a form with 7 questions that you can fill out, and we'll get back to you as far as volunteering for the organization. It is a 501c3 nonprofit. We have a Patreon page as well. And if you just want to drop us a line, feel free to do so at contact@moneylesssociety.com. And I think that's probably about it. There is a lot going on, and not even really talking too much about our future projects as far as where we want to go here with like agriculture and co-ops and all that sort of stuff. So stay tuned. There will be more.
Absolutely, and I'm sure all of this, the links, if you get into one, it'll take you to the others. And participating in the group, I have a lot of fun posting and participating there. I learn things all the time that I wasn't aware of before, new ideas, new things. Sometimes I'm wrong about stuff. It happens to the best of us. And then I love learning new things from people, because different mindsets. And that's one of the good things about Facebook groups, is that they have given us a way to trade this information in an open forum. And I really love that about that. It's been really great having you on the show. Anyone listening to this out there, feel free to check out the Pragmatic Anarchist on any major platform. If you're listening, watch us on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to listen in the car if you don't have a chance. Matt's shared all his links with us. It's been an awesome hour talking to you, and I can't wait to see where you guys go moving forward from here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's my pleasure.
No worries. All right, we're going to end.
You better,